Commander Zethus stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched the star charts flicker across the main display. His 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the blue marble that floated in the center of the hologram. Earth, the forgotten world, the abandoned experiment. 4.2 billion cycles, Science Officer Kravith said from her station. Her voice carried a hint of amazement. We seeded this planet so long ago that our own empire was young. Zethus nodded slowly. He remembered the records from the ancient archives. His ancestors had traveled to this distant star system with a simple mission. They carried the basic building blocks of life in their cargo holds: proteins, amino acids, the fundamental ingredients that would spark evolution on a barren rock. The Vacrine Empire had been expanding then. They planted life on thousands of worlds and planned to return after the organisms had time to develop. 500,000 years seemed like a reasonable wait. Just a brief moment in the grand span of the universe. But things had not gone according to plan. The Great Civil War erupted just 300,000 years after they seeded Earth. Brother fought brother, fleets burned, worlds died. The conflict dragged on for another 200,000 years before peace finally came. By then, the empire had fractured into isolated sectors. Records were lost. Priorities changed. Earth became a footnote, a forgotten entry in a damaged database. What do we know about the current inhabitants? Zethus asked. Kravith pulled up the last survey data. The images were grainy and old. They showed primitive bipeds using stone tools. The creatures walked upright on 2 legs and lived in small tribal groups. They hunted animals and gathered plants. Nothing impressive, nothing threatening. The survey is outdated, Kravith admitted. It was conducted 200,000 cycles ago, but based on the normal pace of evolution, we estimate they have reached early agricultural phase, simple farming, basic metalworking at most. Zethus felt satisfaction warm his chest. Perfect. The planet had developed exactly as intended. The inhabitants would be easy to manage. They could harvest the genetic material for research. The primitive humans could serve as labor in the mining colonies. It would be like picking ripe fruit from a tree. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. 47 vessels. We will reclaim what belongs to the Vacrine Empire. The journey took several weeks. The Eternal Dawn led the formation through the dark spaces between stars. Zethus spent the time reviewing the legal documentation. Ancient law was clear. Any world ceded by the Vacrine remained Vacrine property. The inhabitants were subjects of the Empire, whether they knew it or not. He felt no guilt about this. It was simply the natural order. The strong guided the weak. The advanced civilized the primitive. His ancestors had given these creatures the gift of existence itself. Now it was time to collect what they were owed. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Zethus expected to see an empty void with perhaps a few primitive satellites in orbit around the planet. What appeared on his sensors made him freeze. Thousands of objects cluttered the space around Earth. Satellites. Space stations, orbital platforms. The readings showed power signatures far beyond what a simple agricultural society should possess. Kravith! His voice came out sharper than intended. I'm detecting advanced technology, she said. Her hands moved rapidly across her console. Multiple permanent settlements on the planet's moon, mining operations in the asteroid belt, and Commander, those orbital platforms are armed. Zethus felt confusion cloud his thoughts. This made no sense. Evolution did not move this quickly. 200,000 cycles should not produce such advancement. Perhaps another species conquered the planet, suggested Tactical Officer Bruneth. The humans may have been enslaved or eliminated. Scan for life signs, Zethus ordered. The results came back within moments, billions of humans. They were everywhere. On the planet's surface, in orbital habitats, on the moon, even scattered throughout the asteroid belt in mining ships and research stations. Commander, Kravith said quietly. I'm detecting vessels approaching our position. Dozens of ships appeared on the display. They moved with purpose and precision. Each one flew a flag that showed a blue and green planet surrounded by stars. The human flag. One ship separated from the group and accelerated toward the Vakrine fleet. It was small compared to the Eternal Dawn, a frigate-class vessel. The name Liberty Bell was printed on its hull in bold letters. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put them through." The main screen flickered and showed a human male in a dark uniform. He had short brown hair and calm eyes. The name patch on his chest read Morrison. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet," the human said. His voice was steady and professional. "You have entered United Earth territory without authorization. Please state your purpose." Zethus almost laughed. A single tiny ship was challenging 47 Vakrine warships. The audacity was almost amusing. "I am Commander Zethus of the Vakrine Empire. This system was seeded by my ancestors billions of your years ago. We have returned to claim what is rightfully ours. You and your people are subjects of the Empire." Morrison's expression did not change. "I see. Then I need to inform you that Earth recognizes no such claim. This is sovereign human territory. You need to turn your fleet around and leave. Immediately." Now Zethus did laugh. The sound echoed across the bridge. His crew joined in. The idea that these primitives believed they could give orders to the Empire was ridiculous. "Captain Morrison, you are in no position to make demands. We number 47 vessels to your 1. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Morrison stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in those calm eyes. Something cold and hard that made Zethus's laughter die in his throat. "Commander, I'm going to give you 1 chance," Morrison said. His voice remained level but now carried an edge like sharpened steel. "Turn your fleet around. Leave this system. Do not come back. This is your only warning." "You threaten us?" Zethus felt anger replace his amusement. "You dare?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Morrison replied. "I'm trying to save your lives. You clearly don't know what you're dealing with, so I'm telling you now, as clearly as I can. Leave, please." "We have ancient law on our side," Zethus snapped. "This world belongs to the Vakrine Empire. You are nothing but an accident of evolution on a planet we created." Morrison closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they held something that looked almost like sadness. "We tried to warn you," he said quietly. "Earth doesn't belong to anyone anymore. Not you, not the galaxy. We stand on our own, and we protect what's ours." The transmission cut off. The Liberty Bell's engines flared bright blue as the ship powered up its weapons. The energy readings that appeared on Zethus's tactical display made no sense. A ship that small should not generate that much power. "Sir, they're targeting multiple vessels," Bruneth reported. "Their weapons are hot." "Disable that ship," Zethus ordered. "All forward batteries. Fire." 6 Vakrine cruisers locked onto the Liberty Bell, their plasma cannons charged and fired in perfect synchronization. The barrage should have turned the human ship into vapor, but Morrison was already moving. The Liberty Bell twisted and dove with impossible agility. The plasma bolts streaked past harmlessly. Before Zethus could process what happened, Morrison's ship fired back. The railgun rounds moved faster than anything Zethus had ever seen. They punched through the shields of 3 cruisers like they were made of paper. Explosions bloomed across the hulls. Atmosphere vented into space. The bridge fell silent except for the alarm klaxons. Morrison's voice came through the comm system one last time. It was calm, professional, and absolutely certain. "All batteries. Fire at will." The Liberty Bell moved through space like a hunting animal. Jake Morrison sat in the command chair and watched his tactical display with focused intensity. His weapons officer, Danny Walsh, worked the firing controls with practiced precision. Each shot counted. Each shot landed exactly where it needed to. 3 more Vakrine cruisers took heavy damage in the first 2 minutes. Their shields flickered and failed under the concentrated railgun fire. The magnetic accelerators mounted on the Liberty Bell fired solid slugs at a fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy alone was devastating. "Target their engines," Morrison said calmly. "I want them disabled, not destroyed." "Copy that, Captain," Danny replied. On the Eternal Dawn, Commander Zethus gripped his command console until his knuckles turned white. This was impossible. One small ship should not be able to stand against his entire fleet. Yet his sensors told him the truth. 3 cruisers were crippled. 2 more were taking evasive action, and the human vessel danced between his ships like a creature born in the void. "All vessels concentrate fire on that frigate," he ordered. "Overwhelming force, now!" 20 Vakrine warships turned their weapons toward the Liberty Bell. The space around Morrison's ship lit up with plasma fire and missile trails. It looked like certain death, but Morrison had already anticipated the move. He had fought larger battles than this. He had trained for scenarios exactly like this one. The Liberty Bell's engines flared, and the ship executed a maneuver that should have torn it apart. Instead, it slipped through the barrage with only minor hits to the aft shields. "Damage report," Morrison said. "Aft shields at 60%, his engineer called out. "Hull intact, all systems green." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. The Liberty Bell was a Defender-class frigate, built specifically for situations where humans needed to stand against superior numbers. Every system had been designed with one purpose in mind: protection, defense, holding the line. Science Officer Kraveth stared at her displays on the Eternal Dawn. The numbers refused to make sense. She ran the calculations again and again. The results were the same every time. "Commander," she said slowly, "I'm analyzing their weapons technology, the power generation, the shield efficiency, the propulsion systems." "And?" Zethus demanded. "This is not primitive technology. This is Predator technology. The weapons are designed for maximum killing efficiency. The shields prioritize protection over energy conservation. The engines sacrifice fuel economy for acceleration. Every aspect of their design philosophy focuses on combat effectiveness." Zethus felt cold fear creep up his spine. "How long have they had faster-than-light capability?" Kraveth checked the database. Records indicate humans achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 200 cycles ago. 200 cycles, Zethus repeated. That was nothing. A blink of an eye. "And they built this in 200 cycles?" "It gets worse, Commander. I'm detecting more ships, many more ships." The tactical display updated. Red icons appeared across the screen, hundreds of them. Human vessels were emerging from the asteroid belt. They had been hiding, waiting. Each ship powered up weapons that matched or exceeded the Liberty Bell's firepower. "Count?" Zethus asked quietly. 312 vessels, Brenneth reported. Frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and something much larger approaching from lunar orbit. Zethus pulled up the external cameras. The massive ship that appeared made the Eternal Dawn look small. It bristled with weapons. Armor plating covered its hull. The name Washington was painted along the side in letters 10 meters tall. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said. "From the large vessel. They're requesting direct contact with you, Commander." Zethus straightened his uniform. He needed to show strength, even though his confidence was crumbling. "Put them through." The screen showed a human female this time. She wore a uniform with more decorations than Morrison. Her gray hair was pulled back tight. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. The name patch read Grant. Admiral Lisa Grant. "Commander Zethus," she said. Her voice carried authority that came from decades of command. "I am Admiral Lisa Grant of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I'm contacting you to offer terms." "Terms?" Zethus tried to sound confident. You think you can dictate to the Vakreen Empire? I know what the Vakreen Empire was, Grant replied. I've read your historical records, the ones you left behind in your databases on dozens of seeded worlds. I know you planted life on Earth 4 billion years ago. I know you meant to come back. I know your civil war made you forget about us. Zethus felt his mouth go dry. They had accessed Vakreen databases? How? Grant continued. What you don't know is what happened here after you left. What you don't know is what Earth created. What you don't know is why every slaver in the galaxy fears to speak our name. You expect me to fear primitives who only left their planet 200 cycles ago? Grant's expression hardened. Commander, I'm going to explain something to you. 200 years ago, we achieved faster-than-light travel. In those 200 years, we have explored 12,000 star systems. We have made contact with 463 species. We have ended 14 interstellar wars through diplomacy. We have brokered peace agreements for 47 different conflicts. She paused and leaned forward slightly. We have also completely destroyed 3 empires. Not defeated. Destroyed. Erased them from existence. Do you know what those 3 empires had in common? Zethus could not speak. He shook his head. They were slavers, Grant said. The word came out like a curse. They took sentient beings and treated them as property. We asked them to stop. We negotiated. We tried every peaceful option. When nothing else worked, we removed them from the universe. Permanently. I don't believe you, Zethus managed to say, but his voice wavered. Grant touched something on her console. The screen split. One side showed Grant. The other side showed footage, battle scenes, human ships tearing through alien fleets, planets under orbital bombardment, cities burning, and humans, always humans, fighting with a ferocity that made Zethus's blood run cold. You came here to reclaim property, Grant said. You came to harvest genetic material and conscript labor. In other words, you came to enslave the human race. So let me make something very clear to you, Commander. We would rather burn this entire fleet to atoms than allow ourselves to be made slaves. We would rather die fighting than bow to anyone. The footage continued. Humans charging into impossible situations. Humans fighting against overwhelming odds. Humans protecting civilians of species Zethus did not even recognize. Dying for strangers. Sacrificing themselves for others. The galaxy calls us peacemakers, Grant continued. They also call us the ending. Because we are both. We will negotiate for peace until our voices are hoarse. But if you push us, if you threaten innocence, if you try to take our freedom or the freedom of those we protect. She paused again. Then we become something you cannot stop. Zethus looked at his tactical display. His fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and facing humans who had destroyed empires. His pride warred with his survival instinct. What are your terms? He asked. Leave now, Grant said simply. Turn your fleet around. Return to Vakreen space. Tell your leaders what you found here. Tell them that Earth belongs to humanity. Tell them that we will defend our home and our freedom with every weapon at our disposal. Tell them that we tried to give you a chance to walk away. And if I refuse? Grant's expression showed no anger, no hatred, just absolute certainty. Then you'll learn firsthand why even the legends fear humans. You'll learn why slavers wake up screaming from nightmares about us. You'll learn what it means when humans stop trying to find peace and start fighting to protect what's theirs. The Washington's weapons powered up. Every one of the 300 human ships did the same. The space around the Vakreen fleet glowed with enough energy to vaporize planets. I'm giving you 60 seconds to decide, Grant said. After that, we stop being nice. Zethus looked at his crew. He saw their fear. He looked at his fleet on the tactical display. He knew they could not win this fight, but his pride, his duty to the Empire, the ancient laws. We have rights, he said weakly. Ancient law gives us ownership. Your laws mean nothing here, Grant replied. Earth recognizes one law, Human law. You have 40 seconds. Zethus made his decision. All ships, battle formation. We will show these primitives the might of the Vakrine Empire. We will reclaim what is ours. Grant closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, they held deep sadness. I tried, she said softly. Remember that. We tried. The Washington fired first. The Washington's main cannon spoke with the voice of thunder. Beams of concentrated energy lanced across the void and struck the Eternal Dawn's forward shields. The shields held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing completely. The next volley carved deep wounds into the dreadnought's armor plating. Commander Zethus held onto his console as the ship shook. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge. Damage reports flooded in from every section. His flagship was bleeding atmosphere and crew into space. All vessels advance, he ordered through gritted teeth. Overwhelming force. They cannot fight all of us at once. But the Vakrine fleet quickly learned that humans had different ideas about how to fight. The 300 human ships did not charge forward in a mass assault. They moved with surgical precision. Each vessel knew exactly where to be, when to fire, which target to hit. They fought as a single organism with 300 deadly limbs. The Liberty Bell and 5 other frigates focused on the Vakrine cruisers. Their railguns punched through armor and disabled engines. The destroyers targeted communication arrays and sensor platforms. The cruisers provided covering fire and protected the smaller ships. And the Washington held the center, its massive weapons reaching out to touch any Vakrine vessel that tried to break formation. Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display and called out firing solutions. His crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had fought together for 5 years. They trusted each other completely. Danny, 3 more cruisers moving to flank us, Morrison said calmly. I see them, Captain, Danny Walsh replied. His fingers danced across the weapons console. Targeting solutions locked. Firing. The railguns sang again. 2 of the cruisers took critical hits. The third managed to get a shot off before its bridge exploded. The plasma bolt slammed into the Liberty Bell's port side. The shields absorbed most of it, but some energy bled through. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits. Damage report, Morrison called out. Chief Engineer Linda Hayes checked her systems. Port shield emitter is fried. Hull breach on deck 3. Sealing now. We're still in this fight, Captain. Morrison nodded. Good. Keep us alive, Linda. On the Eternal Dawn, Science Officer Kraveth had stopped analyzing weapon systems. Now she was analyzing the humans themselves. The data she was collecting terrified her more than the battle. Commander, you need to see this, she said. Zethus tore his eyes away from the tactical display. What? I've been monitoring the human communications, the crew casualties, the damage reports. Kraveth's voice shook slightly. Commander, they're not stopping. We've killed hundreds of them. We've crippled multiple ships. And they just keep coming. They don't retreat. They don't panic. They just adapt and continue fighting. Zethus watched a heavily damaged human destroyer on his screen. Its port side was torn open. Fires burned across 3 decks, but its weapons were still firing. Its engines were still pushing it forward. What kind of species fights like this? He whispered. Kraveth pulled up her analysis. A species shaped by constant challenge. Commander, I accessed their historical databases. Earth is classified as a death world. High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive megafauna, frequent extinction events. Humans evolved in an environment that killed 99% of all species that ever existed on that planet. She changed the display to show Earth's history. Zethus saw ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcano eruptions, mass extinctions, and through it all, the small bipeds survived, adapted, thrived. They learned to work together because cooperation was the only way to survive, Kraveth continued. They learned to be persistent because giving up meant death. They learned to be creative because the old solution stopped working when the environment changed. Earth didn't just create humans, it forged them in fire. Another explosion rocked the eternal dawn. This one was close to the bridge. The lights flickered. 2 crew members slumped over their stations, dead from flying debris. "All ships, target the Washington," Zethus ordered desperately. "If we take down their flagship, the rest might break." 12 Vakrine vessels turned their full attention on Admiral Grant's ship. Every weapon they had left focused on the massive dreadnought. The space around the Washington became a storm of energy and missiles. But the Washington had been built for exactly this purpose. Its shields were designed by engineers who understood that sometimes you had to stand alone against impossible odds. Its armor was forged from materials tested in the hearts of dying stars, and its crew was trained to never break no matter the cost. Admiral Grant stood on her bridge and watched the tactical display with cold precision. "Helm, rotate ship. Present fresh shield faces. Weapons, target their formation center. Fire all forward batteries." The Washington pivoted on its axis with surprising grace for something so large. Fresh shields took the punishment while damaged ones regenerated. And when its weapons fired, 3 Vakrine cruisers simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there. The next moment there was only expanding clouds of debris. Zethus felt despair crushing his chest. They were losing. His proud fleet was being systematically destroyed by a species that should not exist, by a species his ancestors had accidentally created. "Commander, boarding parties are breaching the Liberty Bell," Tactical Officer Brenneth reported. A small hope entered his voice. "If we can capture that ship, we can study their technology." Zethus nodded. Perhaps they could salvage something from this disaster. But the Vakrine boarding parties learned another lesson about humans. They learned why humans were feared in close-quarters combat. Captain Morrison sealed the bridge and ordered his security teams to defensive positions. Chief Engineer Linda Hayes grabbed a plasma rifle and joined the fight. Danny Walsh stayed at his console, calmly firing the ship's weapons even as enemy soldiers moved through his decks. The Vakrine warriors were larger than humans, stronger in raw muscle, but they had never fought an enemy like this. Humans used the environment. They knew every corner of their ship. They fought with a ferocity born from defending their home. Linda Hayes took a plasma bolt to the shoulder that should have killed her. The pain was blinding, but she kept fighting. She covered her wounded teammate while he fell back. She held a corridor against 5 Vakrine soldiers until reinforcements arrived. Later, the medics would wonder how she stayed conscious, how she kept pulling the trigger. Linda could not explain it. She just knew that giving up was not an option. The Liberty Bell was her home, her ship, her family. And nobody took that from her while she still breathed. The boarding parties retreated after losing 2/3 of their numbers. The Vakrine soldiers who survived reported something that chilled Zethus to his core. "They fought like demons. They should have been dead. They kept fighting anyway." Admiral Grant watched the battle flow across her tactical displays. She took no pleasure in this. Every human ship damaged meant friends hurt or killed. Every Vakrine vessel destroyed meant lives ended. But she had offered peace. She had given them every chance to walk away. "All ships, Titan formation," she ordered. "Begin systematic targeting of Vakrine drives. Disable them. Do not destroy unless necessary." The human fleet shifted tactics. Now they aimed for engines instead of killing blows. Ships that could not run could be dealt with later. Ships that could not fight back did not need to die. Zethus watched his fleet crumble. 20 vessels were dead in space. 8 were destroyed completely. The rest were damaged and struggling, and the humans were still at nearly full strength. Some ships damaged, some crew lost, but still combat effective, still dangerous. "Commander," Kraveth said quietly, "we need to retreat. We cannot win this battle." "The Empire does not retreat," Zethus said. But his voice held no conviction. "The Empire needs to know what we found here," Kraveth countered. "If we all die, the next fleet will come unprepared. They will die too. Someone needs to survive to carry the warning." Before Zethus could respond, one of his ship captains acted on his own. Warmaster Drexus commanded the dreadnought Eternity's Crown. He was old, traditional. He would rather die than admit defeat to primitives. "All power to engines," Drexus ordered his crew. "Full speed toward Earth. If we must fall, we will take their world with us." The Eternity's Crown broke formation and accelerated toward the blue planet. Its intent was clear. It would crash into the surface. The impact would kill billions. "No," Zethus breathed. "Drexus, stand down. That's genocide." But Drexus had already cut communication. His ship burned toward Earth like a falling star. The human fleet reacted instantly. Dozens of ships turned to intercept, missiles launched, energy weapons fired. But the Eternity's Crown was a dreadnought. Its shields were strong. It absorbed the punishment and kept going. On the Washington's bridge, Admiral Grant's hands clenched. They might not stop it in time. The ship was too close, moving too fast. Then a single fighter broke formation, a small craft that normally provided cover for the larger ships. Its pilot was Lieutenant Chris Parker, 23 years old, fresh out of the academy. He had a girlfriend waiting for him back on Earth, parents in Denver, a little sister who looked up to him. Chris looked at his fuel gauge, his weapons status, his trajectory. He did the math in his head. It was simple, really. "Liberty Bell, this is Fighter 7, he said calmly. "I have a solution." Morrison's voice came back immediately. "Parker, stand down. We'll find another way." "No time, Captain. Their dreadnought will hit atmosphere in 90 seconds. This is the only way." "Chris, that's an order. Do not engage." Chris smiled. He thought about his family, about the billions of people below, about doing what was right even when it was hard. "Sorry, Captain. Sometimes orders and duty don't line up. Tell my folks I love them." He cut communication and pushed his engines to maximum. The fighter accelerated toward the Eternity's Crown. He targeted its main engine core, the spot where all that power came together, where the ship's heart beat. The fighter's weapons were not strong enough to destroy the engine, but Chris was not using weapons. He was using himself. The fighter slammed into the engine core at 3,000 meters per second. The explosion was visible from Earth. The Eternity's Crown broke apart. Debris scattered harmlessly, none of it large enough to threaten the planet. The human fleet fell silent for exactly 10 seconds. Then every ship sounded its horn in tribute, a long, mournful note that echoed across the void. On the eternal dawn, Zethus watched the explosion fade. He looked at the young human's last moments. A pilot who chose to die so billions could live. An enemy who sacrificed himself even for those who came to conquer his world. "Order all ships to retreat," Zethus said quietly. "Maximum speed. We're leaving." No one argued. The Vakrine fleet turned and ran. Commander Zethus expected pursuit. He expected the human fleet to chase down his retreating ships and finish what they started. Instead, the Washington and its escorts held position. They made no move to follow. They simply watched the Vakrine vessels limp away into the dark. "They're not following," Tactical Officer Brenneth said with confusion. "Why aren't they following?" Science Officer Kraveth studied her sensors. "They're deploying rescue craft. They're collecting survivors from the destroyed vessels. Commander, they're saving our people." Zethus turned to look at her. "What?" "Human rescue ships are pulling Vakrine crew from the debris fields. They're bringing them to medical facilities. They're treating the wounded." Zethus could not understand it. These were enemies. Warriors who had just been trying to kill each other. Why would humans save them? Before he could process this, a communication came through. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but not angry. Not triumphant. Just weary. "Commander Zethus," she said. I'm offering you safe passage back to Vakreen space. Your fleet will not be pursued, but I'm also extending an invitation. Come to Earth. See what you tried to destroy. See what you tried to enslave. Maybe then you'll understand why we fought so hard. Zethus wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it. But curiosity and something deeper pulled at him. What guarantee do I have that this is not a trap? You have my word, Grant replied simply. I'm a human. We keep our word. Always. 3 hours later, Zethus found himself aboard a human shuttle descending toward Earth. He sat across from Admiral Grant. 2 guards flanked him, but they did not point weapons. They stood relaxed, professional, as if transporting enemy commanders was routine for them. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere, and Zethus saw cities sprawling below, gleaming towers reaching toward the sky, lights that sparkled like stars on the ground. Advanced infrastructure that should not exist for such a young species. But mixed among the human architecture, he saw something else. Buildings in different styles, designs from dozens of species, aliens walking the streets alongside humans, markets where creatures from across the galaxy traded freely. How many species live on Earth? He asked quietly. 412 at last count, Grant replied. Refugees, scientists, diplomats, traders, anyone who needs sanctuary finds it here. The shuttle landed at a facility near the coast. Grant led Zethus through corridors that hummed with activity. Humans rushed past carrying datapads and medical supplies, but among them moved aliens of every description, working together, living together. They entered a large chamber with windows overlooking the ocean. The walls were covered with names, thousands upon thousands of names carved into stone panels. This is Memorial Station, Grant explained. Every name you see belongs to a human who died trying to stop a war. Diplomats killed during negotiations, peacekeepers caught in crossfire, mediators assassinated by extremists. We've lost 11,000 people in the last 200 years trying to make peace across the galaxy. Zethus walked closer to the walls. Each name had dates. Some had messages from family members. He saw one that made him pause. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez died negotiating ceasefire between Threxian and Gordoth fleets. Age 24. She believed peace was always worth fighting for. Sarah died when both sides opened fire during peace talks, Grant said softly. She refused to leave the neutral zone. She kept trying to broker agreement even as the weapons charged. She thought if she could just find the right words, she could save the millions who would die in the war. Did she succeed? Zethus asked. Not that day. But her sacrifice made both sides stop and think. 3 months later, they signed a treaty. The war ended. 7 billion lives were saved because one young woman refused to give up on peace. Grant guided him to another section. Here, the displays showed images and videos, humans negotiating at conference tables, humans building schools on war-torn worlds, humans teaching medicine to species who had never known health care, humans protecting refugees fleeing from violence. This is what we do, Grant said. We fight when we must, but we prefer to build, to teach, to protect. We learned something important on Earth. Survival requires cooperation. Thriving requires caring about more than just yourself. They moved to a third section. The atmosphere changed here. The lighting was dimmer, more somber. The displays showed darker images, battles, destroyed cities, mass graves. These are the 3 empires we destroyed, Grant said. Her voice had gone flat. The Kresh Dominion, the Saltax Collective, the Vren Unity, all slavers, all refused every attempt at negotiation, all continued taking sentient beings and treating them as property. Zethus saw footage of human fleets burning through enemy formations, orbital bombardments turning cities to ash, ground troops advancing through hell itself. The humans in these videos fought with terrifying efficiency, no mercy, no hesitation. We tried for years to find peaceful solutions, Grant continued. We offered economic incentives. We imposed sanctions. We negotiated. We begged. Nothing worked, so we did what we had to do. We removed them from the universe. One video showed a human soldier weeping while pulling slaves from a burning building, saving lives even while destroying the city around them. We hated every moment of it, Grant said quietly. But we would do it again if we had to, because some evils cannot be tolerated. Some wrongs must be corrected no matter the cost. She turned to face Zethus directly. You came to Earth, planning to make us slaves, to harvest us like crops. Do you understand now why we fought back? Do you understand why we would have destroyed your entire fleet rather than submit? Zethus did understand, finally, completely. You're not afraid of death. Oh, we're afraid, Grant corrected. We're terrified of death, but we're more afraid of living as property, more afraid of abandoning those who depend on us, more afraid of failing to protect the innocent. Fear doesn't stop us, it drives us. They left Memorial Station and traveled to another facility. This one was a hospital. Grant led Zethus through the wards. He saw Vakrine soldiers in the beds, human doctors and nurses tending their wounds, saving lives that had been lost in battle against them. One room held a Vakrine warrior named Trenix. He had lost an arm in the fighting. A human doctor named Rachel Stone was explaining his treatment options. She spoke gently, patiently, as if he were not an enemy but just another patient who needed care. Why? Trenix asked her. Why save me? I tried to kill you. Your people. Rachel smiled sadly. Because you're hurt. Because you need help. Because choosing to harm you now would make us into the monsters we fight against. We don't hate you. We just won't let you take our freedom. Trenix looked at Zethus with confusion and shame in his eyes. They're treating us better than our own empire does. What kind of enemy does this? An enemy that doesn't want enemies, Rachel replied. We want friends, allies, partners. We fight when we must. But we'd rather heal. Grant took Zethus to one final location, a park in the center of the city. Here, humans and aliens mingled freely. Children of different species played together. Families shared meals. Street musicians performed for appreciative crowds. An elderly alien sat on a bench feeding birds. He noticed Zethus and Grant approaching. His eyes widened when he recognized Zethus's uniform. Vakrine, the alien said. His name was Kelmuth and he was Threxian. I thought I would never see your kind again. You know the Vakrine? Zethus asked. Know them? Kelmouth's laugh was bitter. I was enslaved by the Kresh Dominion, worked in their mines for 30 years. The Kresh bought their faster-than-light engines from Vakrine traders. The Vakrine knew what the Kresh did with their technology. They did not care as long as the credits kept flowing. Zethus felt shame burn through him. He had not known this. But ignorance did not excuse guilt. The humans freed you? He asked. The humans freed everyone, Kelmouth replied. They came to our world with warships and mercy. They destroyed the Kresh fleet. They broke open the mines. They offered us sanctuary if we wanted it, or aid to rebuild our world if we preferred. I chose to come to Earth. I wanted to live among the people who cared enough to save strangers. He looked at Grant with obvious affection. I've been here for 70 years now. I've watched humans argue over the cost of war. I've watched them mourn enemies they were forced to kill. I've watched them choose peace over and over, even when war would be easier. They're not perfect, but they try. They always try. Kelmouth turned back to Zethus. You came to make them slaves. You would have learned the same lesson the Kresh learned. Humans can be beaten. They can be killed. But they cannot be broken. And they will die before allowing others to be enslaved. That's why even legends fear them. Not because they're cruel, but because they're absolutely certain about some things. And freedom is one of those things. Admiral Grant and Commander Zethus walked in silence for a while. The sun was setting. The city lights were coming on. The beauty of it struck Zethus. The peace, the harmony between species who should be enemies. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "That depends on you," Grant replied. "You can face trial at the Galactic Assembly for attempted invasion, or you can return to your empire and tell them the truth. Tell them what you found here. Tell them that Earth is not interested in conquest or revenge, but we will defend ourselves, and we will defend anyone who asks for our protection." "Why give me this choice?" "Because I believe you're a good person who made a mistake. Because I think you can learn. Because mercy is stronger than justice sometimes." Grant stopped walking and looked at him. "And because I'm hoping that understanding can prevent future bloodshed. I don't want to fight the Vakreen Empire. I'd rather have you as friends." Zethus thought about everything he had seen, the strength, the compassion, the absolute conviction. Humans were terrifying not because they enjoyed violence, but because they were willing to suffer any cost to protect what mattered to them. "I will carry your message," he said quietly. "I will tell my people the truth. I cannot promise they will listen, but I will try." Grant smiled. It was genuine and warm. "That's all anyone can do. Try. Keep trying until you succeed or die trying. That's the human way." She extended her hand. Zethus knew this gesture. A human greeting. A sign of peace. He reached out and clasped her hand. "Thank you," he said, "for the lesson. For the mercy." "You're welcome," Grant replied. "Now go home, tell your story, and maybe next time we meet, it will be as friends instead of enemies." The Eternal Dawn limped into Vakreen space 6 weeks after fleeing Earth. Commander Zethus stood on his damaged bridge and watched his homeworld grow larger on the main screen. He felt no joy at returning, only dread at what awaited him. His fleet had left with 47 vessels. 23 returned. The rest were destroyed or too damaged to make the journey. Thousands of Vakreen warriors were dead. The defeat would not be forgiven easily. Science Officer Kraveth approached him quietly. "Commander, the High Council is demanding immediate communication. They want to know what happened." "Tell them I will report in person," Zethus replied. "They deserve to hear the truth directly." 2 days later, Zethus stood in the Grand Chamber before the High Council. 12 ancient Vakreen sat on raised platforms looking down at him with cold eyes. Supreme Overlord Drethnak occupied the center throne. He was the oldest living Vakreen. He had ruled for 3,000 cycles. He did not tolerate failure. "Commander Zethus," Drethnak's voice echoed through the chamber, "you took our finest fleet to reclaim a ceded world. You return in disgrace with half your ships destroyed. Explain yourself." Zethus straightened his uniform. "My lords, I will tell you exactly what happened, but I warn you, the truth will be difficult to accept." He presented the complete records, every sensor reading, every communication, every battle. The council watched in silence as the story unfolded. Zethus saw their expressions change from anger to confusion, to disbelief, to fear. When the presentation ended, the chamber remained quiet for a long moment. "This cannot be accurate," Council Member Vresh finally said. "A species that achieved faster-than-light travel 200 cycles ago cannot have such advanced technology, cannot have such military capability. The data must be corrupted." "The data is correct," Kraveth spoke up from beside Zethus. "I have verified every measurement. The humans possess technology that rivals or exceeds our own. They have built a civilization that spans hundreds of worlds, and they have established themselves as a major power in the galaxy." "Impossible," another council member declared. "Evolution does not work that quickly." Evolution on Earth works differently, Kraveth explained. The planet is what xenobiologists call a death world. Extreme conditions, constant challenges. Species either adapt rapidly or go extinct. Humans are the result of 4 billion years of pressure. They are optimized for survival. Supreme Overlord Drethnak leaned forward. His eyes were sharp despite his age. This is troubling news. But it does not explain why you retreated. We have more ships, more resources. We could have returned with greater force. Zethys shook his head. My lord, you do not understand. Military force will not work against humanity. They have fought and defeated enemies far stronger than us. 3 slaver empires with fleets that dwarfed ours were completely destroyed, not defeated, erased from existence. He pulled up the footage Admiral Grant had shown him. The Council watched humans fighting with determination that bordered on insanity, sacrificing themselves to protect others, refusing to surrender even when death was certain. They fight like this because Earth taught them that cooperation and protection are the keys to survival, Zethys continued. They value freedom above all else. They will die before becoming slaves, and they will kill anyone who tries to enslave them or those they protect. Drethnak studied the images carefully. Yet you live, Commander. They had you at their mercy. Why did they let you go? Because they wanted me to bring you this message. Zethys touched a control, and Admiral Grant's face appeared on the main display. It was a recording she had given him before he left Earth. Grant's image spoke directly to the Council. Leaders of the Vakrine Empire. I am Admiral Lisa Grant of United Earth. Your fleet came to our home with the intent to enslave our people and harvest our genetics. We defended ourselves. We won. But we take no pleasure in the lives lost on both sides. She paused, and her expression became earnest. Earth has no interest in revenge or conquest. We don't want your territory. We don't want your resources. What we want is simple. Leave us alone. Leave our allies alone. Respect the sovereignty of all sentient species. Do these things and we can have peace. Refuse and we will defend ourselves and others with every weapon we possess. The recording continued with Grant explaining human history, their wars, their achievements, their philosophy of protection over conquest. She spoke for 30 minutes, and every word was calculated to make the Council understand what they faced. When it ended, the chamber remained silent. Finally, Council member Thanos spoke. He was the youngest member, only 800 cycles old. We seeded Earth intending to create an agricultural world. Instead, we created something far more dangerous. We gave them a crucible, and they emerged from it as warriors. Warriors who prefer peace, Zethys added. I spent time on Earth. I saw their cities, their hospitals, their memorials to those who died seeking peace. They fight only when they must. But when they fight, they win. Supreme Overlord Drethnak stood from his throne. All eyes turned to him. This is a difficult truth to accept. For thousands of cycles, the Vakrine Empire has been supreme, unchallenged. Now we learn that our forgotten experiment has surpassed us. He walked slowly around the chamber. Pride demands that we gather our full military and return to Earth, that we reclaim what ancient law says belongs to us. But wisdom suggests a different path. Drethnak stopped and looked at Zethys. Commander, do you believe the humans would honor a peace treaty? Yes, my lord. I believe they would die before breaking their word. And if we offered trade instead of conquest, cooperation instead of ownership, I believe they would welcome it. They have no desire to be our enemies. Drethnak nodded slowly. Then we will surprise them. We will send not a war fleet but an ambassador. We will acknowledge their sovereignty. We will propose trade and cultural exchange. We will show that the Vakrine Empire can also learn. Not all council members agreed. Several argued for military response, for upholding ancient law regardless of the cost. But Drethnak's will prevailed. He had ruled for 3,000 cycles because he understood when to fight and when to adapt. However, Drethnak continued, we will not send just any ambassador. Commander Zethus, you have seen Earth. You understand humans. You will return as our envoy. You will negotiate the peace that wisdom demands. Zethus felt shock run through him. My lord, I am a military commander. I am not trained in diplomacy. You are trained in recognizing when you are outmatched, Drethnak replied. You had the wisdom to retreat and the courage to speak the truth. These qualities will serve you well as ambassador. 3 months later, Zethus returned to Earth. But this time he arrived on a diplomatic vessel. No weapons, no fleet, just a small ship carrying him, Kravith, and a delegation of Vakrine diplomats. They were met not by warships, but by a greeting party. Admiral Grant was there, so was Captain Jake Morrison, and a human Zethus did not recognize, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. His name was Frank Torres, and he was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. Commander Zethus, Torres greeted him warmly. Welcome back to Earth. We're pleased you chose peace. Ambassador Torres, Zethus replied. Thank you for receiving us. My empire wishes to formally apologize for our attempted invasion. We were wrong. We ask for the opportunity to make amends. Torres smiled. Apology accepted. Now let's talk about the future instead of the past. The negotiations took 2 weeks. The Vakrine Empire formally recognized Earth's sovereignty. They renounced all claims based on ancient law. In return, Earth agreed to share certain technologies and establish trade routes. Both sides committed to mutual defense against threats to either civilization. But the most important agreement was simpler. A joint research station would be established to study how to properly nurture developing worlds, how to guide young civilizations without enslaving them, how to be protectors instead of conquerors. Zethus was assigned as the Vakrine liaison to this station. He would work alongside human scientists, learning from them, teaching them, building something better than what either species had before. 5 years passed. Zethus stood on the observation deck of Research Station Unity and watched ships coming and going. Human vessels, Vakrine vessels, ships from dozens of species who had joined the initiative, all working together to create a better galaxy. Kravith approached him with a datapad. Commander, we have reports from the border systems. 2 minor species are fighting over resource rights. The conflict is escalating. Have the humans been notified? Ambassador Torres is already preparing a mediation team. They want to know if we will join them. Zethus smiled. Of course we will. That's what partners do. They took a joint peacekeeping ship to the border systems. Humans and Vakrine working side by side, negotiating, mediating, finding solutions that prevented war. It was slow work, difficult work, but it was the right work. During the negotiations, Zethus watched Jake Morrison talk to leaders from both sides. The human captain had become a skilled negotiator. He listened patiently, found common ground, reminded both parties of the cost of war. You've changed, Zethus said to Morrison during a break. When we first met, you were ready to destroy my fleet. Morrison nodded. I'm still ready to fight if I have to, but I'd rather find another way. That's what Earth taught us. Violence is sometimes necessary, but peace is always preferable. Your species is remarkable, Zethus said. You could conquer half the galaxy if you wanted. You have the strength, the technology, the will. We could, Morrison agreed. But what would be the point? Conquest doesn't bring peace. It just creates more enemies. We learned that lesson the hard way throughout our history. Better to make friends than subjects. Better to cooperate than dominate. The mediation succeeded. The 2 species signed an agreement to share the resources. Mining rights were divided fairly. Both sides agreed to human Vakrine oversight to ensure compliance. Another war prevented, more lives saved. On the trip back to Station Unity, Zethus recorded a message for the Vakreen Historical Archives. It would be stored for future generations, a record of what had been learned. "We came to Earth expecting to reclaim a harvest world," he spoke into the recorder. "We found something far more valuable. We found teachers. We found partners. We found a species that had learned what we forgot during our long isolation." He paused and looked out at the stars. "Humans are terrifying in combat. They fight with determination that borders on madness. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They refuse to break no matter the pressure. But this is not what makes them legendary. This is not why even the oldest civilizations speak of them with respect." Zethus thought about everything he had seen: the hospitals, the memorials, the refugees living peacefully on Earth, the countless species that called humans friends. They are legendary because they care, because they protect strangers as fiercely as family, because they keep their word even when breaking it would be easier, because they choose peace whenever possible, but are terrifyingly effective when war becomes necessary. He finished his recording with a final thought, a truth that had taken him years to fully understand. "We seeded Earth and forgot about it. We meant to create a harvest. Instead, we created conscience. We meant to create property. Instead, we created protectors. Earth's harsh environment forged humanity into something the galaxy desperately needed: warriors who prefer peace, protectors who fight only to defend, leaders who serve instead of rule." Zethus looked at the blue planet on his display. Earth, the forgotten world that had taught the galaxy a better way. "The legend of humanity is not built on fear," he concluded. "It is built on hope. Hope that even the most violent conflicts can be resolved. Hope that former enemies can become friends. Hope that the strong will choose to protect the weak instead of exploiting them." He saved the recording and returned to his duties. There were more conflicts to mediate, more species to help. More work to do building a galaxy where cooperation replaced conquest. And through it all, humans kept patrolling the borders of known space. Eternal guardians, always watching, always ready, choosing peace but prepared for war, protecting those who could not protect themselves, living up to the legend that now defined them across the stars. The galaxy had learned why even legends fear humans, not because they were monsters, but because they were the opposite. They were the conscience the universe had forgotten it needed, and they would never stop fighting to protect it.